Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen McKercher, and I am the Informa Show Director for A19. I wanted to thank you all for joining us today for our last webinar in our series, Inside the Mind of the Architect, presented today by Jefferson Davis and Nick Work. Next slide.
Oh, one moment.
I also wanted to make sure that you guys know about our Exhibitor Success Center on our website. It's on conferenceonarchitecture.com under the My Exhibitors section. This is a great area for you guys to reference different materials and articles, as well as view our past webinars. I think in the next couple of weeks before the show, this would be a great area just to further your knowledge and make your show experience the best it can be. And next, I want to turn it over to one of our presenters, Jefferson Davis. He's from Competitive Edge. He is a trade show productivity expert, has a wealth of knowledge. This is our second year now working with him. He's really helped a lot of our exhibitors. He's there to bounce ideas off of, and I think you will all benefit, especially from our topic today. So I want to turn it over to Jefferson.
All right. Thank you, Kristen. And again, thanks to everyone for being here. You know, the philosophy at Informa Markets and AIA is to not just rent you concrete and hope it works out. So as Kristen mentioned, if you have not spent time on the Exhibitor Success Center, I strongly encourage you to go there right after the webinar today. We've organized the content into a 5-step consumption plan. The first thing you'll want to do is download the management and measurement tools. These are pre-built and ready to go, customizable. There were 5 pre-show planning exercises. They really address the big rocks of exhibiting, which determine success or failure. And as Chris has mentioned, we've got webinars up there. There are articles organized by topical area, and you have the ability to access me and a team of trade show experts for free with any exhibiting productivity questions you may have. So make sure you bookmark it, share it with everybody on your team, and be sure to access it because we are continually updating it. So the topic today is called Inside the Mind of the Architect. And last year at A18 in New York, we actually did this in the form of a live panel discussion. So we're going to pull a blend of content for today's webinar. Part of it's going to be what we learned from the panel discussion with the architects. I've got Nick Work here with B2B International, who has done some in-depth industry research on manufacturer and architect relationships, which I think some of it is going to surprise you. And then we'll kind of share, you know, some of the perspectives, what they're looking for, what they want more of, less of, and everything else. So I want to start off with a poll before we get into the content here. I'd like to ask you, it's a bit of a quiz question, but the question is, what percentage of architects do you feel consider building relationships with manufacturers as vital to their professional development, their career growth? The poll is live right now, and you have 3 different options for answers. Please pick the one that you think is true. All right, fastest fingers. We've got about 70% of you have polled already, and the answers I think will surprise you in a moment here. Let's see. 85% of you have polled. If you haven't polled yet, I'll give you just another moment. On 3, 2, 1. We're up to almost 90%. Thanks. Let me share the results. So 41% of us on today's briefing feel that the answer was 43%. 34% of us feel it was 73%, and 24%, 1 out of 4 feel it was 88%. So to take you inside of this answer and many more answers, I would like to welcome Nick Work from B2B International. Nick, take it away.
I think that's an interesting perspective, and as we're going to see in just a couple of moments, the manufacturers we have on the line today do seem to represent manufacturers in the market in general. As it turns out, we might as manufacturers sometimes be a little bit harder on ourselves than we actually need to be. what I'll give you now is a very short highlight of some of the research that we've been doing. So over the last 3 years, the AIA has done many research projects with myself, sometimes with manufacturers, some of which might be on the phone today, to better understand fundamentally what does this relationship between architects, their specification, and building product manufacturers look like. And in general, we do try and focus on things that manufacturers can do better to increase their spec rates and indeed serve the architects better. But it's rarely really a story about manufacturers not doing something wrong. It's more often missed opportunities. One thing that strikes me as a career researcher is how unique architects are. First of all, in how intelligent they are as people, how many things they have to deal with, but perhaps most of all, just how much respect they have for the suppliers that serve them, how much they rely on folks such as yourselves, that they come to Vegas in large part to come and meet face to face. So some of the gaps that we've seen is, first of all, just that lack of architect focus. There are a lot of manufacturers out there today that don't feel they really know how to engage architects, or maybe they feel that they know how to talk to contractors, but they're not quite sure why they should be talking to architects. Our research, AIA's research, again and again demonstrates just how crucial architects are to specification, to making sure that your product is not just considered, but actually ends up being realized through design. The other thing is what's happened more recently over the last 3 to 5 years is expectations of reps, the people with whom architects would actually have a relationship with your company. They're really changing, and not all manufacturers have adapted to that. So, for instance, maybe 5 years ago, being category experts, not just knowing your own product inside out, but knowing everything in your category, would have been seen as a differentiator. Well, that's no longer the case. That's really much become an expectation. The other piece is speaking to digital needs. I won't focus too much on that today, but it goes without saying, and I'm sure some of you will have heard this feedback, that manufacturer websites can be somewhat cumbersome to navigate. They don't always seem like they were built with architects in mind, which indeed does cost specifications. There are, though, a couple of areas I want to focus on in a little bit more detail, starting with, first of all, that lack of an architect focus. So I suppose we should ask ourselves, should you really focus on architects? Is there any reason to do it? And I think our research would suggest a yes, very much so. We know architects are absolutely pivotal to not just selecting product, to specifying product, and so on. We do see things like spec writers, third parties being involved, but more often than not, it is still an architect that actually makes the product decision whether they produce the final specs or not. So it's really, really important to engage with these folks. We see today that while most manufacturers do a decent job, that there are a fair few that simply don't meet the needs of architects and therefore fall by the wayside. So the rest of today's presentation will be a little bit more to give you ammunition to make sure that you're not in that group. So to better understand that, I suppose, if we ask ourselves, what is the big thing that architects really want? What are they really looking for more so than anything? And that relationship piece is really what they tell us again and again. Architects know a little bit about everything. They don't know everything about everything. So for that reason, they need people to supplement their expertise. If they're, going into specialty coating, or they don't know how to design a roof membrane correctly, and so on, they will look to you guys. So as a consequence, 88%, which only a quarter of the people here in today's cast actually voted for, that is the number of architects who are telling us that building relationships with folks like yourselves is pivotal to their career and their personal success. So why is it that our survey, the people listening in today, and in general, when we talk to manufacturers, why is it they think that number is so much lower? I think part of it is that you'll be very quick to hear the negative feedback. It can be very, very hard to trace specifications and holding specifications. It's not an immediate sale, it's a long-term game. But we're here to tell you that you really shouldn't beat yourselves up. Architects have a great deal of respect for manufacturers. They know they need you guys to help realize their designs and their product expertise. So again, it's a case of missed opportunities. And for that reason, while architects, almost all architects, 95% want to work closer with manufacturers directly for specification, well, they only found about half of the manufacturers that they come across really worthwhile of such a relationship, again, because they're not really being targeted, they're not necessarily seen as a priority. So what does that mean for Vegas coming up in just a few weeks? Well, first of all, architects love face-to-face contact. It's really, really important to them, particularly more so when they've never worked with a manufacturer before. That first face-to-face meeting is absolutely crucial. One thing that's interesting is that particularly younger architects, they value face-to-face even more, both when it comes to meeting and being introduced to manufacturers, and when it comes to things like continuing education. So if you're doing that in Vegas as well, it will be really, really important. And the reason for that is architects, even younger architects, understand just how important these relationships are going to be to their careers and their ability to realize their designs and do what they want in their careers. So if they are early in their career, they've still not made these relationships yet. So meeting face-to-face is a really unique opportunity for that. And of course, we hear again and again when we train sales reps, when we talk to manufacturers, strategists, it's so hard to get in front of the architect. The architect will only talk to us when they need something. It's so hard for us to come and get in front of them. And we hear that and we recognize that is a challenge. And even when we talk to architects, they will admit that they can be very one-sided in when these engagements happen. So guess what? Vegas is an unrivaled opportunity where that is no longer the case. You've got a captive audience. The AIA have built a conference that makes sure that the architects will come onto the expo floor. And as Jefferson is going to talk about in a moment, those guys don't just turn up and walk around. They know what they're expecting, and he's going to give you some pointers as to how you can best meet those needs.
All right, Nick, thank you. Some great insights on architects, why they're important, how they see the relationship with manufacturers, and some of the opportunities for us as manufacturers to really get in their mind and build that relationship by using the power of face-to-face. Nick, if somebody wanted more details on the research report that was done, is there somewhere they could find that report?
Yes, the AIA released these reports on their website. They're also available to AIA partners for free. If not, they're for sale as well online.
All right. Well, thank you. Yeah, knowledge is power. Research is power. There's an old saying is that if you want to sell somebody what they buy, you got to see their world through their eyes. And I think getting a hold of that report, the B2B International Research Report, would shed probably even more light and give even more ideas. So any exhibitors interested in that, be sure to check with AIA on that. So last year, we did a live session at the show, and we had a really robust panel of, we had Edward Vance, Derek Guffey, and Nicole Dosso, all three of which who are pretty heavy hitter architects. And the purpose was to just kind of let it hang out. Let's try to figure out who they are, why they attend, how they prepare, what they want, what they don't want, how they want to be followed up with. So I'm going to give you in a rapid fire a lot of what we learned from the panel discussion. So the first big thing was, the top 3 reasons why architects specifically attend trade shows. Top of the list is learning, right? So they're looking for what's new, what materials are new, what processes are new. They're looking for trends. They're really trying to watch where are things going, what's hot, right? Where are things going? They're always looking to how do we improve the quality of the designs we create. They're very concerned about compliance issues with manufacturing, OSHA, city, state, government, compliance, safety issues, and CE, or continuing educational credits. So one of the fastest things that any exhibitor can do if you want to really drive interested, qualified traffic to your booth is think less about selling your product and think more about educating the architect. If you'll use the word, hey, come see our booth to learn 3 new ideas to improve your design, you'll be speaking their language and they'll come running to your booth. So learning, the number 1 reason. Number 2 falls under the basket of what we would call shopping needs, and that would be sourcing, specifying, but also validating, and write this one down, revalidating existing buying relationships. You know, if they just had a project where a vendor, they spec'd, the product didn't function as performed, or they had installation problems, or cost overruns, this really opens the door for you being a new exhibitor. So they do come with a very clear intention on shopping type needs. And the third reason is networking. A19 is the gathering of the architect tribe. This is the place where they make the time and they come out to interact with their colleagues and their peers, subject matter experts, key opinion leaders, and you, suppliers. You know, as Nick validated through his research, the relationship with manufacturers and suppliers is more important than apparently most manufacturers seem to understand. So these are the three big reasons why. And, you know, it's kind of interesting to think about your exhibit program and try to touch all three of these needs. Have a learning component, have a part of your exhibit that really speaks to helping them understand your products from sourcing, specifying, and networking opportunities, whether that is in your booth or whether that's at hospitality events around the show. But the more you can touch all three of those needs in your exhibit, the more traffic you're going to get to your booth. Because again, we don't know for any one individual architect what their primary need is, but almost every attendee has a blend of these three needs, and these three needs will vary by who you're talking to. So one of the questions we asked them, you know, we said, okay, it's 6 weeks before A18 last year. What's happening back at your office? What are you doing to get ready? How do you prepare? It's a big show. 800 exhibiting companies, right? Sessions, social events. How do they prepare? And so the main answers we got was that they really sit down and they look at their current projects and their upcoming projects, and they're looking for where they have needs, where they have products where maybe they're looking to change or improve, or maybe they have a request for a new product that they don't have a vendor relationship with yet. So they are looking at current and upcoming projects to identify what their areas of interest are going to be for the show. Then they tend to hold meetings with their design team to just talk about what's happening with their projects, what challenges are coming into, what concerns are they're facing, if there are any specific suppliers that they need to get more of or do less with. So that meeting with the team, and then from there they start to draw out a list of priorities. You know, as Nick mentioned, this is a very intelligent, very prepared group. They're coming to the show with pretty firm agendas. They know what educational sessions they're going to attend. They know what social events they're going to go to. They know where their blocks of time in the exhibit hall is, and they tend to approach their list in the form of must see, should see, nice to see, and almost all of them said they like to knock out their must see first, because sometimes schedules will get off the rails. So they're coming with a list of exhibitors, sometimes to almost always organized by priority of who they want to see. They also are coming prepared. They may go to your website, they may do a little recon. It's very likely that they're going to walk into your booth with a specific list of questions. And that, for you, by the way, as an exhibitor, that's the greatest person you could have walk in your booth, because you know you've got someone who has an interest and a need. If they've taken the time to think through their questions, they are seriously looking at potentially speccing you into their design. So keep your ears wide open. And by the way, that would be one of the smartest things you could do in the booth before your booth staff just starts talking at them, is ask them, hey, what brought you by our booth? What were you hoping to learn today? Ask. That will give them the chance to step forth with their agenda. And then, hey, once they have an agenda, all you have to do is identify what their information needs are and meet them. And if you meet them well, you're going to be in good shape. We talked about the schedule. They tend to have a pretty firm schedule. Now, they try not to schedule every hour of every day, because what we heard from all of the architects was they like to have some wandering time. They like to have that space where they're not on this specific hunt, but they can move around the exhibit hall and just kind of take it in, you know. But they do come with that schedule, and they do, for the most part, know who they want to see before they even get to the show, which is why it's so important that all of us as exhibitors do pre-show marketing, which we talked about in another webinar, which is up on the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center. Speaking of pre-show communications, we asked them that question. You know, we said, hey, if you're putting together your agenda for the show, what communications do you pay attention to, and which are you most likely to physically respond to? They said email was okay, but don't overdo it. They said the biggest problem was when they get 5, 6, 10, 14, 20 emails from a specific exhibitor in a couple weeks leading up to showtime. That irritates them, and it's possible that if you're overdoing it, that they could blacklist your email. So I'm not saying don't use email. I'm saying don't overuse it. And when you do use it, create immediate relevance by having the A19 in the subject line with a crystal clear short subject line as to the purpose of the email. Direct mail. Interestingly enough, very few exhibitors are using mail as part of a pre-show marketing campaign, and yet all three architects said they appreciate, they value, and they pay attention to their inbound mail, especially around showtime. So if you want to be where your competition isn't for trade show pre-marketing, get back in the mailbox because the response rates are going up. One of the reasons why it's so effective is the clutter is very low. The average business person today is getting 147 emails a day. That's a lot to sift through. Their B2B mailbox may be in 3 or 4 pieces a day. So it gives you the chance to kind of stand out. And mail is sticky too. You know, they have their finger on the delete button when you send an email. But if you put a nice concept mailer in their hand with a call to action and a reward for coming to see you, they'll put it in their show file. You'll be amazed at how many will show up at your booth with your direct mailer in their hand. They are paying very careful attention in the 3-month window leading up to showtime in trade publications and professional journals. And they're looking both at editorial, and they said that their awareness of advertising in print goes up too, because again, they have projects needs and their radar is looking. LinkedIn, the B2B power tool of choice, connecting with them on LinkedIn, using InMail on LinkedIn. Very powerful way to communicate. The open rate on LinkedIn InMail is 1 out of 4. The open rate on general B2B sales and marketing emails is 4 out of 100. So that's a difference between a 4% response and a 25% response by using LinkedIn and specifically InMail. But also the groups on LinkedIn. So when you connect with an architect, take a quick look at what groups they're members of, join those groups, monitor the content, post content, throw questions out there. Okay, LinkedIn. The show website is an important tool to them. They'll often go to the alphabetical exhibitor list when they're searching, and they will look at the floor plan to see where you're located. So anytime you have the opportunity for advertising, whether it's banner ads, expanded listings, digital packages, be sure to use that stuff because they're using the show website and the show mobile app. That's another place that they're really paying attention to. So make sure you've got a robust listing. If you have the ability to invest in advertising on the show website and or the mobile app, those are really smart places to be. Next, we kind of moved into, so we talked about pre-show planning, how they prepare, and we talked about what media they're paying attention to and what they're engaging with. And so now we took them, we said, okay, you're on the show floor, you're out there, what attracts you to a booth and what repels you from a booth? And you can imagine that this conversation can get really funny because they really let it hang out. But here's the big attractors. They said the number one thing that your booth has to do at a glance, it's got to be Captain Obvious. What do you do? What do you offer? What do you sell? They're not going to stand there and try to figure it out. There's too many booths. They're going to glance at that booth, and if there's one thing that's got to jump off your booth, what do you do? Now, we did exhibit evaluations at A18, and we're going to be back at A19 again doing exhibit evaluations, and you would be amazed at how many booths we scored that it takes a little horsepower to figure out what they do, and that is a colossal mistake when it comes to exhibiting. The second thing they want is they want to do more in your booth than they can do on your website. They want interactive, touchy-feely, hands-on, educational product demonstrations and presentations. They love to touch the product. They love to see it in scale models. They love to, kind of understand, the features and benefits of it, and they want this to be interactive, right? So the more you can make your presentation highly interactive and educational, it's going to draw them to your booth like flies. Number 3, your booth staff plays a critical role. If they walk up near your booth and you got 2 or 3 people in your booth sitting in the back with a cell phone in one hand and a Starbucks in the others, they're going to pass right on by. So you got to make sure that your booth staff looks like they want to be there, standing up, they're smiling, they're greeting people, they are quickly responsive. The average visitor to a booth will not wait more than 1 minute and 15 seconds. If they're not engaged in 1 minute and 15 seconds, they'll walk away. So make sure your booth staff has their game on. Giveaways. We asked them, how important are giveaways? And they were like, if it's something we take home, give to our kids, maybe, right? But what they really wanted in giveaways was something that's unique. How many different branded pens can a human being have, right? And they like useful giveaways, things that they can use like measures and calculators and these timelines. Like I have one in front of me, it's called a date finder, which shows the weeks and days. All I do is spin the wheel. And so they really want unique, useful giveaways. All of them agreed that food and beverage is a way to kind of help them refresh. It will increase their dwell time in your booth, right? So food and beverage and seating and recharge areas. And we're seeing a lot more of these on show floors where exhibitors will have a small area in the booth with a couple seats, and they'll have a place where they can plug their phone in and recharge, and that buys you time with them. So these were some of the main attractors, the things that they said pull them toward a booth. The repellents, no booth staff. They walk up to your booth, there's nobody in it. They're not stopping. They're moving by, and they're probably not going to be back unless they feel they absolutely have to see you. Passive staff who's looking and acting like they don't want to be there, repellent. Over aggressive staff out in the aisles pouncing on people, they don't like that either, right? They want the opportunity to look at your booth, process it, right, and then figure out if they're interested. Again, one of the repellents is I have no idea what you guys do. They don't want you to go for their badge too quick, right? And that's a big mistake a lot of exhibitors make. The first thing they'll do is, hey, let me scan your badge. They say, let's talk, figure out who I am, what our needs are. Let's see if we have a fit before we go for the scan. They want you to understand who they are, why they're visiting, and what their needs are relative to what you do before you go into a company or a product presentation. So they want you to take a moment to understand them. And that only takes 2 or 3 questions, right? They don't want you to get too long and too deep. The balancing act is they want to learn, but time is the enemy. Information overload is the enemy. So they want you to be able to deliver your company and your product messaging concisely, right, in sound bites, right? And they also want you to be careful about using jargon and phrases that they may not understand because they're a very educated group and they don't want to look stupid. And if there may be certain jargon or phrases that you use or that are commonplace to you, but are foreign to them. And you can tell it when you talk over someone's head in a booth because they've been giving you great eye contact. You're talking, you're making your point. All of a sudden, you use some word with 26 characters, and you notice them break eye contact, look down. That's a good sign that you probably said something that they're not tracking with, they're not understanding, they're not following. Never hurts to stop and ask, does that make sense? Are you with me? Are you following me on that? Keep your product presentations in the 3 to 7 minute range is about the window there. And you can get a lot done in 3 to 7 minutes if you're doing it right. Then we move to follow-up. We ask them, okay, so you visited a booth, you met with the people, you were comfortable with the people, you were interested in their products or services. How do they follow up so as not to be a pest? Well, the first thing they wanted you to do was ask. Rather than just saying, well, if I can scan your badge, we'll send you some information. Ask them what information they would like to receive. Ask them when would they like to receive it. Ask them how would they like to receive it. Don't assume that they want to take it with them while they're standing there. Some do, some don't, but don't push it on them, right? Just ask them, what information would you like? When would you like to receive it? How would you like to receive it? And here's a bonus question. Who besides yourself might also want to see this information? The other thing they want on follow-up is do what you say you're going to do. If you tell them that you're going to have a product samples and a package to their office within 10 days, get it there in 9 days, right? Don't get it there in 14, 21 days. And whatever promise, if you said you were going to do a lunch and learn at their office, which they actually enjoy, do it, right? If you said that you were going to put them in touch with a project that you just completed, do it, right? But do what you say you're going to do. It's a big concern that a lot of exhibitors promise they're going to do this or that. They walk out of the booth, they never hear from the exhibitor again. In your follow-up efforts, because they visit a lot of booths, they might visit anywhere from 20 to 40 individual booths and have conversations. They want you to have some recall of what the conversation was about in the booth. So make sure that your booth staff is asking questions, taking notes, right, about what their interests, what their needs, what their concerns, what their questions are. And that way, when you follow up, you can tie your follow-up back to the conversation in the booth. When it comes to email, just like in the pre-show, they don't want to get an email every day, right? They said, if they make the connection, they're interested in your product services, they take your information, they're going to file it. As soon as they have a project where they have a need, they go through their files, and they do keep the information, by the way. And then, maybe once or twice a month, depending on the frequency of their purchase of your type of product or their speccing of your product, to maybe even quarterly. Okay, so don't overdo the email. They love educational materials that will not only teach them, but their team, and they love samples. So if you have the type of product where you can send a sample with it, send away. Lunch and learns were something that came up. This chance to bring lunch in and get in front of the team and kind of, some people call those dog and pony shows. I don't call it that. I call it lunch and learn. Right? You're bringing a lunch, you're learning. Hey, if they can spec $10,000, $50,000, $100,000 of your product, would it be worth $250 lunch for the team? All the way to the bank, right? The phone. They're okay with you checking in from time to time. Again, it's not an overdue thing, but if once they know that you have a solution that they like, right? As soon as they have a project where there's a need, you're gonna come up in front of them because they do keep your content. So check in once in a while, drop a phone call in, just see how they're doing. Update them on a project that you just completed. If you have video, before and after videos, if you have interviews with the owners, the designers, the producers, whoever, videos are awesome. Keep them updated. new, right? They're always looking for what's new. So any new developments on your end, that's reason to contact. You just completed a project. They love to hear about projects that your work was involved in. And when they reach out to you, move fast, respond quickly. If they call you and say, hey, I've got a project coming up, I need to meet with you, let no dust settle under that call. Because if they don't hear back from you for 2, 3, 4, 5 days, it's possible that they've moved on to their second supplier. So move fast on your follow-up. Okay, and then finally, we closed out the session. And this is the way I framed the question to them. I said, look, you have overchoice of about any product or service that you could spec. There's 5, 10, 15, 25 potential suppliers, manufacturers. And so I closed the session with, what is the most important things that an exhibitor can do to be the one that gets their business? Number one, all the way back to what Nick's research found, they are looking for relationships. Relationships are built on communication and trust, right? So communicating with them, building a relationship of trust, understanding. The number one thing they wanted was relationships. Number two is they really want to understand your key points of differentiation. Again, they have a lot of choice about what to spec. So they want to understand your products, the categories you're in, and they really desperately want to know what makes your solution different. So don't be shy about pointing out your differences. Be there when they need you, whether that is for specs, whether that is for a problem, especially when there's a problem. When they need you, be there. Be honest, right? Just tell it like it is. Tell the truth. Don't overstate your claims. When it comes to your service, they like under-promising and over-delivering versus over-promising and under-delivering. Next, what was interesting about mistakes was they said a lot of manufacturers get really panicky when they make a mistake. They say, but we understand that we're all humans, and as people, we make mistakes. And it's not a question of if a mistake is going to happen. Somewhere down the relationship, it's going to happen. The main thing they wanted is, if you make a mistake, don't dodge, don't shift blame, own it, admit it, take responsibility for it, and make it right. They also said that when a manufacturer overcomes a mistake with them, that the relationship deepens, right? And so a lot of us kind of freak out a little bit when a problem happens. We're like, oh God, I don't know if I want to talk because of this or that. That is your chance to deepen the relationship. You solve a problem, admit it, learn from it, make it right, don't do it again. That's really the philosophy on mistakes. Admit it, right? Apologize, make it right, learn from it, don't do it again, if at all humanly possible. And finally, they said, don't take their business for granted. The longer we have manufacturer-vendor relationships, the more it seems like they begin to start taking it for granted. Sometimes pricing starts shifting and going up, without any notice or any apparent reason. And, so just, do not take their business for granted. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here, rapid fire. Nick, I appreciate your inputs on the research. Kristen, thanks to you and everybody, at Informa Markets, for really being the champions for building exhibitor education into the program, the exhibitor package. And my biggest message to every exhibitor on here is keep learning, keep growing. Things are changing fast. My core philosophy is that what got me to where I am today will not sustain me for another 5 years. I've got to keep learning. I've got to keep growing. The competition is moving too fast, right? So, Nick, starting with you, any closing thoughts, comments, or additions on what we've talked about here today?
No, I thought it was very thorough. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nick. And then, Kristen, any closing thoughts or comments from?
I just want to thank everybody for your support of A19 and for joining us for this webinar. I think it's been very informative. And I hope everybody got something out of it. And again, like Jefferson said, make sure to visit our website. And if you guys need anything in the coming weeks before the show, please reach out to either me or your account exec, and we will get all of your questions answered and help you out to make your show a success.
All right. Well, thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Nick. And interestingly enough, I'm not seeing any questions at this point. Hopefully that's telling me that we did a really good job here and gave you a ton of content that you can start thinking about which of those ideas, those wants, those needs of the architect can you best satisfy. I encourage you to review this content and find at least 3 practical ideas you're going to apply for the upcoming show. And if you will, I can close our webinar today not by wishing you a successful A19. If you will make your exhibit program align with the wants, needs, and desires of the architect, you will win the exhibiting game big time. And that's our hope and our wish, prayer, and dream for everybody on this webinar. So thanks for logging in, everybody. We will see you on the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center with any questions you may have. We just had one question flash in. Nick, I think this one may be in your wheelhouse. Where can we get the research report again?
It's on the AIA website. There is a section under Insight and Research Reports. If not, if you are an AIA partner, you can get it through your account manager, or you can contact the building product sales team.
Excellent. Thanks for your help. And last point, please watch your email. You'll receive a link to that real short survey. Give us some feedback on today's web briefing. We'd love to hear from you. And we will see you on the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center. So everybody have a great day. We'll see you also in Vegas very soon. Thanks for logging in.